Hi, and welcome to a new edition of Newsmakers TV. I'm Jerry Roberts. It is Friday, October 27th. Happy birthday to Teddy Roosevelt today, 8,023 years old. Anyway, we've been stood up by a number of reporters this morning, and they'll be getting their termination letters in the mail soon. But fortunately, I have a man who needs no introduction and who talks even more than I do. Josh Molina, man of mystery, podcaster, educator, and political writer for Newshawk.
And runner up.
Always count on you, brother, even if the rest of them are, I don't know what they are. They're oversleeping or they're on the road or there's something, getting their teeth fixed. I mean, there's always some cheesy excuse, but
Well, Jerry, as you recall, I'm always the guy with was 3 weeks of vacation that I never took, tons of paid time off I never take because I don't know, it's a sickness, I guess. It's an
yeah.
addiction to
And you remember that used to be okay too. You could carry it over, but then they started not letting you carry it over. And then they wanted to know why nobody was in the newsroom. Okay, then. All right. Well, anyway, we got a lot to talk about in the city, so let's start there. The city council passed I don't know if it was a resolution or an ordinance or whatever it was. Anyway, they want to change bid procedures for public works projects for the city, so they don't have to necessarily give them to the low bidder. They can consider other things. Is that right?
Yeah, so the Public Works Department says we are bound by the charter to accept the lowest bid for these public works contracts. And that worked for a time, but there are a lot of factors in the industry that are making this process difficult, they say. One of which is people will underbid and then they will charge more afterward. And so the cost of these contracts end up
My wife has
escalating.
hired every one of those guys, by the way.
That always happens to you, right? And so these other contractors who say, wait a minute, we gave you a realistic bid and we were rejected, and it would have ended up being the same or less than what you ended up paying. This is a frustration point for the Public Works Department. So what they want to do is to move toward a best value, which they say state law change, which allows municipalities to be able to do this. And so they want to be able to have a bunch of contractors on like a pre-bid list, invite them, and then let them know what their specifications are and what their expectations are. And then they can accept the bids based off of these preset sort of understanding and these rules. And ultimately, they don't want to have to pick the lowest bidder. They want to pick the bidder who's the most responsible, who they think has the most value. And they have to change the charter to do this because it's in the city charter.
So we have to vote on it at some point.
Yeah, so the public works staff made this sale, this deal, this presentation to the council so that they could approve it on the ballot next November. They say that fewer people are bidding on contracts in the city because the city, one, has this old system. And so people are bidding in other cities. And so the only people who are bidding are, they say, are like minimum standard companies.
So is it possible that there are fewer bids because of the PLA program, which requires, driven by the Democratic Party and the unions, to require
Greg Hart, let's just say his name out loud, right?
yeah, Greg Hart.
You know,
But I mean, is it related to that at all, or are these just entire?
that didn't come up in the meeting. They didn't present that. No one on the council
No,
brought
because they
that
all
up.
voted for it.
Right.
So, yeah.
So I would imagine, of course, that the amount of labor costs that these companies have to pay is a factor in their determination into what they're going to bid on in the city of Santa Barbara. Of course it is. Now, the backdrop of this is that the city has this big police station project coming up. And this project is going to cost $90 million plus. in today's dollars. So this will give them some flexibility if this passes to be able to work with the contractor on how much this eventually is going to cost. Because as we know, the Library Plaza project, which came up,
Well,
which
yeah, that's what I was going to ask. So is there real world experience that the city's had where this has been a problem, or is it a solution in search of a problem?
well, the Library Plaza renovation project is the one that came up in the meeting. And this project's been ongoing for several years now. And the deadline for it being completed has been pushed back. And so some speakers said this, and members of the staff and the council also said that this is an example of losing control of a project and surprises happening along the way that are leading to delays, and the cost is escalating. And meanwhile, we still have this, if you've been down there, Jerry, you can't navigate through there. You can't walk through, it's fenced off. It's kind of a hassle in terms of public access. So that's the project they point to. And then that they have the $90+ million project that's coming up. And so there wasn't a lot of controversy with this. It was mostly Public Works trying to explain it to the city council. And this is the direction that they'll be going and putting on the ballot. I mean, for them to vote on this, they'll have to just make a case that it's, good for the public, and it's going to cost them less money in the long run.
Yeah, I would strongly recommend that not go on the ballot with any bond issues, because people are in a very cranky mood about the economy. And I say, oh, we're not going to take the low bid anymore. Oh, okay. I mean, is this strictly staff driven, or is there somebody's political agenda behind this, you think?
Well, I get the sense that it's probably staff driven, in the context of the Library Plaza project and this police station being a huge thing. Now, if we can fast forward 5 years or something and we think about, can we afford, from a public communication perspective, a police headquarters project that goes on and on and on and on, and the costs escalate? There's already controversy around that project and how much it would cost, in terms of some community members. So I think it's more of a proactive attempt and looking at the Library Plaza. And then I'm sure they go to their events where they network with other public works people, League of Cities stuff.
This is like a thing.
Come back with these great ideas.
All the cool kids in the public works community are doing. Hey, just one related thing. Speaking of the police station, I was in an event yesterday, and a couple of people asked me this. Have you heard anything, gossip or otherwise, about whether the city is or is not interested in acquiring that newspaper building there that's right next to them, or anything's going on with that?
They're very much interested in acquiring that land. I just don't think there's any interest to sell that land to the city. I think it's out of reach, and I think there's a lot of people who want to buy that property. There was some talk of some movement for some kind of downtown hotel in that building or in that spot. And I had heard that there were conversations at one point between individual hotel developers in town and Ampersand, and then they fell apart. Whether those can be revived or not, I don't know. Of course, the city would want that as a public works, public facility project in the context of De La Guerra Plaza, or maybe some housing on the parking lots there. But I just don't think there's a will to sell that land.
Yeah, or at least at a price that the city could afford. All right. Elsewhere in the paradise that is State Street, according to Councilperson Sneddon and Harmon, and the lovely quote unquote promenade. You had this piece about this little boutique getting kicked out of Paseo Nuevo, which sounds like a really good idea. This is what we need to do, is shut down more retail. What's that all about?
Well, everything with Paseo Nuevo is in play right now. Obviously, we know the city is working with the developer and the investment company that owns the mall to knock it down and build housing. And whether that's going to happen or not, we don't know. It's going to take a while. So Paseo Nuevo has decided to end a 7-year market that occurred in the Paseo there. It was called Blissful Boutique Makers and Wares Market. And it had been there 7 years. And so you had a lot of
what do they sell? They sell clothes?
Yeah, they sell clothing, they sell jewelry, they sell crafts, knickknacks. It's local vendors who set up in the Paseo there, by the movie theater, by the movie theater, the old Macy's building over
Pierre
there.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, the old Pierre Lafond, right? I think it's a different company, Work Zones now. And so they would set up there, and they would do it there 3 days a week, and then now it's going away. And the controversy is that the owner of this market, she got an email saying we're going to end it in November, and she felt very shocked that this happened. Paseo Nuevo is going to replace it with their own market.
Because it was successful.
Well, that's what she says. She says they're still in, the owner of it says that they're still in the idea. And some of the vendors are going to jump ship and go work for that. Now, of course, in the process of this reporting, there's always people who will point fingers and say, oh, well, maybe this person wasn't as great to work for as they represent themselves. But the city did not get involved. The city, she reached out.
This is the Paseo Management Company is doing this.
The Paseo Nuevo Management Company is doing it. But what happened was the owner of this market reached out to the city to say, hey, can you help me? Can we do this? How can we save this? And her name is Lisa Green. And so she reached out to Mike Jordan. I think she reached out to several of them. She's conversations with Jordan, according to her, started off well, but it did not end well.
That's pretty typical for what happens with Mike.
Yeah, and Lisa is Mexican American, and I guess she at one point said that, hey, you're driving out a woman of color, a business owner of color, and she felt like that was not as received as it should have been. She called Oscar Gutierrez, and she had a more open ear, and he said he was going to try to do something and work with her, but it would take time, and was going to try to find a new location for her. But basically, she's getting booted out, and these vendors will be affected. Paseo Nuevo, of course, says, from a public's perspective, we're still going to have a market. It's just going to have different ownership. So I think we're seeing a lot of different things that the mall is going to be trying to do here in the meantime.
She called Megan. Isn't that Megan's district?
I think so. Yeah, I think it's so. I don't know. I didn't talk to Council Member Harmon on this issue. So she didn't mention Harmon in our conversation.
Yeah, that's who she's got to go to. Well, so, all right. So in other words.
But she also reached out to Robin Elander at the Downtown Association. Yeah. And Robin was very kind, very helpful, said, there's nothing we can do. This is Paseo Nuevo's decision. Lisa Green had asked Robin if we can do the market on State Street, since there's a promenade and the street is closed.
Oh yeah, plenty of free parking. Or
why not? And Robin had said it doesn't make sense to do two markets in front of each other, one in the mall and one outside the mall. And so it kind of died down there. So Lisa Green is looking to Santa Barbara City College. I think she's got some agreement to have a market there. But
where, in the parking lot there? Or something?
Yeah, the parking lot. But that's a destination. That's not, you don't get casual people on the weekend or whatever traveling.
No.
Checking out your market. So it is an example of frustration with City Hall, and City Hall saying, hey, this is private. There's nothing we can do. But this context of, there's probably gonna be a lot of changes in the mall coming up, really.
Well, it can't be a lot of money, but I imagine there's some sales tax revenue that's involved there that the city stands to lose, or maybe gain. I mean, maybe that's the play, that they figure with different management, they'll sell more stuff.
Lisa Green said she paid the city $100,000 a year in rent. So, I mean, that was just her. I don't know about other taxes.
Yeah. Well, Another chapter in the ongoing saga of how downtown was saved. Yeah, okay, we got it. All right. Speaking of Robin, we had this dispute this week about the flags of State Street, which is another thing. It's too bad we lost the paper, because remember on page 2, that was always a little thing in the public square column, the flags of states,
Right.
what's up and why, because they get changed every week. But apparently the flag for representing the Jewish Federation was up, as a nonprofit. It had anything to do with the war, but
Right.
it just coincidentally happened to be up during the war. So then a lot of people said, oh, that shouldn't be up. You're taking sides in the war. And then it was after that demonstration that you and I talked about last week, and an anti-Israel demonstration, where it came down. And so they said, oh, you caved into the pressure from the other side. But in fact, I don't think that's what happened at all. Don't those, I mean, the flags are scheduled, right? They go up for a week, they come down, something else goes up, correct? And so I
Yeah.
think, yeah. I mean,
So yeah, this was a big deal this week, that these flags were on State Street. Some people spoke at the Santa Barbara City Council meeting, and they asked the city council to take down the flags. And others showed up at the meeting and said, don't take down the flags. And there were more people actually in favor of keeping the flags up than taking them down. But the argument was that we're in the middle of this conflict, and these flags represent one perspective, one side, and there's no acknowledgement of the Palestinian side and what they have endured through this whole conflict. And so that was the argument. And so they asked them to take the flags down. Now, these flags are weekly. It was not scheduled after this, but there is a certain amount of sensitivity here that was a little bit lacking. That yeah, it would make sense, but this was not an Israeli flag. This was a flag for the Jewish Federation, so it's synonymous with their nonprofit organization. And so,
right.
so that's what happened. There were speakers at the meeting, and the council. It was public comment, so the council cannot. Kristen Sneddon did comment. She did turn on her mic and say that she stood by the flags being up, and that there was, no reason to take down the flags at all. And it was in recognition of this organization that has done so much for the community. And so that was kind of the end of it. But these are on a rotating basis. So you can argue.
Does the downtown, I mean, who decides? The downtown association, or is it a city thing, or who makes the
I believe
call?
it's in partnership with the downtown association. Yeah. And of course, Robin Elander, again, she had put out a statement, and I guess the recent one too, just sort of explaining this process, that it was done ahead of time. This was not done in response to that. I think there probably should be a little bit of sensitivity, as Jerry, in journalism, like you can have a story ready to go and it makes sense, and then something happens, and then you're like, uh-oh, maybe we shouldn't run this story now. We should probably hold this, because in light of this new development, this story might look insensitive. And so those are news decisions that people make. Those are much harder for people who are not in that news world. But I mean, what do? They're already up. They didn't take them down, but the next flags are coming in for sure. And I think that
They're not going to put up a Hamas flag, are they?
No, Jerry, I'm 100% sure that will not be happening.
Yeah, well, the Independent had a little week-long beef going on. They ran an op-ed written by a bunch of eggheads out at UCSB, sort of blaming that hospital bombing on the Israelis, because they wrote it, like 5 minutes after the thing happened, and Hamas came out and of course immediately said it was the Israelis, which it has proved not to be. But anyway, it was in the paper, it was in the print edition, so there was no way to go back on that. They did add an editor's note at the top, which I think probably made things worse. But anyway, I mean, sensitivities. I mean, not a great decision to put that one in the paper, I have to say, although I'm loath to criticize anybody's editorial judgment. All right, here's the other big story of the week. Josh is suddenly the beat reporter for the Harbor Commission. What the hell's going on with that? All of a sudden you got 2 stories out of the Harbor Commission in 2 days after no stories out of the Harbor Commission in 25 years. What?
I got to cover the city, education, business, any big housing stories at the county. I'm a jack of all trades, right? So anyway, it was a little slow, and I was like, let me check out some of these down page commissions. And Harbor Commission, we have a really vibrant harbor community, working harbor. And in the old days, right, like there wasn't one reporter who covered the entire city. Like people covered the waterfront and the harbor, and then there was the politics.
I'm trying to remember who covered that.
Morgan Green.
Oh, that's right, Morgan Green. Yeah, because Morgan had a boat, right?
Yeah, and so these enterprise funds, and someone else covered the airport. Like they're their own beats, their own stories. There's plenty of stories there.
Because they have their own revenue streams.
Yeah, they have their own revenue stream. Well, see, it was kind of, I had harbor on my mind because I went to the Harbor Seafood Festival last Saturday, and so that was really fun. And so I was like, wow, there's a lot going on here. And I ran into Kate Ford actually.
Oh, of course you did.
And she's on the Harbor Commission now, and I was like, whoa, I didn't know that face. That's a school board skateboard. So anyway, at this meeting, they proposed that they were going to eliminate what's known as fool's anchorage, which is the ability for boat owners to park their boats free from March to October 31st. So the harbor space is at a premium. It's full. There's a waiting list. They do a lottery.
Yeah, and it's expensive, right? To get a slip, it's a lot of money.
Yeah, and then it's traded, and they try to guard against it, but underneath people trade them, and it's a valuable little side, under the radar business. And so the city, the Public Works Department, goes to the Harbor Commission and says, we can't allow these 30 people to park their boats here. And it's funny, you just don't even notice it, but it's out there on the other side of Stearns Wharf, kind of in front of the Cabrillo Arts Pavilion. There's a whole bunch of boats out there. And they said that our desalination main line pipeline goes right underneath that. And they did a couple of viewings or, divers saw this, and the pipeline was scraped. So it's their determination that these moorings that these boats use to kind of hang out there have damaged these pipelines, which could cause infiltration into the water system, which I guess is a bad environmental thing. And so they said, we don't want these. So can you get rid of them? Can you move them? And so the waterfront department is saying, sure, we'll do that. They have 3 zones, right? But the other ones cost. This is the only one that's free. So they're asking them to move over, and they're going to have to pay like a permit fee, and then it costs money to be able to anchor down, and it's like several $1,000s. So it's a significant change if you're one of those people. The city says, it's seasonal anyway. It's only from March to October 31st. So these people got to move their boats half of the year anyway. All we're doing is saying you have to move them the rest of the year. And so I got to tell you, Kate Ford included, this Harbor Commission, they hated this idea. They thought this was...
So they were all in for the boat owners.
Yeah, they're like, what are you doing here? Harbor people are not rich. Some of them are traveling in. They just want a free place to park for a little while. And there has to be a better way than to just boot them out. And it was unanimous. Everyone there said this was a terrible idea and we don't want to do this. The Public Works Department said that the California Coastal Commission actually isn't excited about it either, because it actually reduces the amount.
But it's been there for like forever, right? I mean, it's not like this is a new thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, as long as they've had it. I mean, the harbor, this is not a new thing at all. And the Coastal Commission, their whole thing, right? One of it is access to the coast. And so they're not supportive of it. And then one of the commissioners said, I'll tell you what, when the Harbor Commission, I mean, when the Coastal Commission tells us we need to do this, then I'll listen. But if they're not telling us to do this, I don't think we need to move forward. And so what happened was, since we're at the end of the season, they're going to think about this and figure out if they're going to come back with this proposal or figure out something new anyway. So, but it was fascinating. I need to watch more of those harbor commissions because they're pretty exciting.
You know, just parenthetically, I got to say, I mean, I don't know anything about boating other than I try to stay off them. But if I had a boat, I'm not sure I would park it at a place called Fool's Anchorage. And that might be a branding problem there, somewhere, or maybe that's what they want. Sound like a big week for the Public Works Department to be coming up with big ideas here. They're the ones on the contracts too, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, Public Works and my Cliff Maurer had a lot of talking time. But that's the other thing is, during the winter, boats will wash up, you know, when it's sort of more stormy. And so the ones who wash up are usually the ones who are in the anchored paid area, and they still wash up. It doesn't happen a lot, but it does. And so they're sort of also saying it's just going to be kind of safer. But I mean, I was out there. There was a boat that washed up in the summer from that Fool's Anchorage area. I mean, it happens year round because we get storms.
I mean, how credible is the evidence that this is in fact what caused the damage to the decel line, if in fact there was damage?
Very credible. One of the harbor commissioners actually asked that, like specifically, like, what was the damage? How do we know? And it was basically an inference based off of what they saw.
So it could have been Free Willy or anybody else that did it, right? I mean,
yeah, and it was two. It's like 2 times, and I guess that matters, but 2 times, right? I mean, that's not like it's happening every day over there.
All right. And then the other thing you learned in your intensive coverage of the Harbor Commission was at Brophy Brothers, which, what did you say in your story? They're like the 4th most profitable or 5th or something in the country per square footage. Yeah. But anyway, they've had this little gift shop, I guess, down below, and they're getting rid of that, and they're going to sell. It's going to be a fish market, or what is it going to be?
It's going to be a clam bar. Ooh. I don't know if you've been to Brophy Brothers, but
I have.
You might want to go and get in line right now. You know,
I know.
Have dinner in 5 hours.
No, Friday lunch would be we'll get right on there.
So it's small, the area, but per square foot, it's one of the most profitable restaurants in the country. This place is always busy, and there's always a line out the door. And so they own this, it's called the Store Mercantile Shop underneath, where they sell beachwear and Brophy Brothers swag. And so their line is already out in front of this every day. And so they thought, the Brophy Brothers owners said, why don't we just make this more places for people to eat? So they're going to do a clam bar. This is significant in the sense that, like, in the restaurant business community, because I mean, Brophy Brothers is just, if you come to Santa Barbara, you're going to Brophy Brothers. Somebody is recommending that you need to go eat there. And so it was kind of cool. They were unabashed in their plea. They just said,
we need more money.
We will make 5 times as much money per month if you allow us to have a clam bar. Then they went off the rails a little bit and said retail's dying everywhere, so let's why are we doing retail out there? You know, it's just like, okay, that's not exactly like a retail shop, you know, it's like a little market. But they basically try to make the case of, if retail and Amazon, if Amazon's killing retail, why do we want a retail shop? If we do food, we should just have more food. And so, and of course, everybody was all for this. This was not like Fool's Anchorage. Everybody on the commission said, yes, more clams.
So did you get a look at the menu? I mean, is there it's going to be like there'll be only clams, or will there also be oysters? And
one of the harbor commissioner members asked that, is it only going to be clam strips? And the business manager for the harbor had said, I'm sure they'll have a wide variety of seafood options.
It sounds pretty good. maybe it'll relieve some of the line, or, you know, it could cannibalize their business from upstairs. Who knows? All right. Well, I'm glad you're keeping a close eye on the Harbor Commission and all these 7-0 votes. It sounds like there's a lot of comity and collaboration going on out there. So maybe the some of the other boards and commissions could take a page from there. And then last, I want to ask you about this American Indian Health Clinic thing over on State and Las Positas, which has been kicking around for years. This specific plan or whatever it's called, and finally got to the Planning Commission, and they're all in love with it, huh?
Yeah, and then I want to ask you a question before we end, Jerry. So remind me. But
Okay.
the American Indian Health and Services Clinic is moving from El Mercado, which is on Upper State Street, where it nears Hollister. And this is a clinic that serves indigenous populations and is in multiple offices. Like was not set up as a clinic. It's just office space. So they've been in these cramped quarters for years, and now they have decided they've acquired this old Army Reserve building over there on the corner of Las Positas and State Street.
It's been empty for a long time, huh?
Now the federal government declared it an excess asset, and so they sold it. And so now they're gonna knock it down and turn it into a clinic. And
they're gonna demolish it and start from scratch. Okay, all right.
And we're talking dental care, we're talking medical care, and right now there's something like 2 chairs for dental work, but they're not even connected to like plumbing, you know, so they have to like move and go back and forth. The conditions at the office are not good. So the new is going to be state of the art, and it's going to be right there in Mackenzie Park. And so it's a significant deal. They also, by the way, as part of their specific plan, agreed to potentially building housing at that site.
Yeah, how much? Substantial amount, or
They didn't talk numbers, but they said that they have the ability now to build housing at that site. So I don't know what that means for a parking lot or pony league, but down the road, if it ever should become feasible, they have that right, with the only caveat being that it needs to be for low income individuals.
low income or missing?
Yeah. No,
So-
not missing middle. So you can't be
Which is too bad, because then you could start to think about the staff, you know, the people that are working there, which would, I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me in a lot of ways. But I'm concerned about the parking as someone who watches, I don't know, 40 or 50 pony league games a year. I mean, that parking lot is always packed. I mean, usually most of the games are on weekends, but when you get into the season, there's Wednesday night games, there's different, I mean, and they're not going to enlarge the parking lot for this.
No, this is going to be they're not adding more parking spaces for this. They've got quite elaborate plans for it, so I guess they'll have to figure out a way to make it work the way it is and see how it goes. There is that street parking, but I know the clinic's a big priority for the city, and I didn't hear any talk come up about.
Yeah, and you got the dog
Oh,
park there
baseball.
too. People use that. I mean, that's what the street parking is usually used by people from using the dog park. Yeah, that's getting pretty congested over there. All right. Well, I guess
Jerry,
it's
I
a
wanted
good
to ask-
thing. Huh?
That's a good thing. Everyone's really, really excited that these services are going to be more high profile. A lot of people don't know that these services exist.
But it's restricted of who can use it, right? You can't just I live in the neighborhood. I want to get my teeth cleaned here, right? You can't. It's not that.
Yeah, it's Native American populations, and then people who qualify through their income. So I don't know what that is, but my guess is maybe not Jerry.
Did anybody show up against it from the neighbor? I mean, it's pretty.
No, people are all for it for sure.
Yeah. All right.
Now, Jerry, I know you attended the celebration of life for Marilyn McMahon, former News Press reporter for 4 decades. So I just wondered if you could share a little bit about that event.
Yeah, it was a nice event. It was held at the women's club, over on Mission Ridge, and there was over 100 people there. You know, a lot of old friends of Marilyn's, and of course, and some old news press people, and you know, she just knew so many people. You know, Judy Hill was there from the Channel City Club, and of course, she and Marilyn had to, you know, knock down the gender bias at the Channel City Club. More recently than you would think. It was men only, and I think the same at the University Club or this. And anyway, it was nice. I gave a little tribute to Marilyn and her journalism and her years at the paper. And then Joan Arnold, a good friend of hers, spoke, and she was very funny because she said that, you know, when the pandemic started, she just didn't know what to do. And Marilyn started showing, well, this is how you get Grubhub. And then this is how you get Netflix. You know, Marilyn was apparently a master of getting everything to come to her house. And also getting people to do stuff for her. There's a very funny story about how she bought the biggest Christmas tree. She made Joan go in to buy the Christmas tree out at Earl Warren. She said, just get the biggest one you can. And they weren't delivering. And then by the time Marilyn got done with them, not only were they delivering, but they were walking it up her 17 steps and setting it up in her living room for her. So that was pretty good. And then both of Marilyn's kids, they're not kids, spoke. Kate, who had the clothing store, of course, and she was really waxing poetic about their very idyllic childhood, you know, before Marilyn went to work for the paper and she was teaching part-time and stuff. And they lived in a big place over in Montecito. It sounded very nice. And then Steve, her son, also spoke and just kind of gave a quick run through all the different phases of Marilyn's life. But it was very funny because Steve is bald as a cue ball, but he, you know, that straw hat that Marilyn always wore, he put that on his head to give the talk, and they had a slideshow going on behind them, and so like 1 out of every 3 pictures, Marilyn was wearing that hat that Steve was also wearing. So he got a lot of laughs out of that. So it was nice, and they had a little food to eat, and you know, it was a low key event. But Steve did say that I think earlier this year, Marilyn called her and him and Kate over to the house and said she was ready to explain to them what her plans were for when she died. And she had this all written out, everything that she wanted about how she wanted it, you know, where she wanted her ashes. And Steve said that she wanted her ashes scattered at various locations throughout Santa Barbara. And as he went to do this, he discovered there was a state law against doing it. So it wasn't clear whether he did it or not, but obviously Marilyn didn't care whether it was a state law or not. So it all went according to plan, I guess, for Marilyn. You know, 93 years, she had a great life. She did so much, and she really was a great person, and someone who, you know, I think while keeping her credibility as a journalist, still was someone who gave so much energy and care to what Larry Crandall used to call the eleemosynary community in Santa Barbara, the nonprofits, and really, you know, just was kind of a community treasure from that perspective. So nice event. Yeah, nice event. Thanks for asking.
Yeah.
All right. Great. Well, maybe next time we'll find the others who were supposed to be here. But meanwhile, you can be sure that there'll be no dead air with Josh Molina and I. Thank you for watching.
But no, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I say so. Josh, thanks a lot. And thank you all for watching. And we will see you next time on Newsmakers.
Thank you.